Good afternoon. My name is Ruth McCambridge, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the nonprofit Quarterly. We are so happy to have you with us today to participate in a webinar called After the Donation, a research-based workshop on retaining donors. And I will say that this is not just a research-based workshop, but a research and practice-based workshop. But I'll say more about our speaker in just a minute. Before we move on, apropos of today's topic, I want to say that this is our first webinar that we've presented this year that is not sponsored, and what we would like to do is actually ask for you to support the nonprofit Quarterly today. So we will put up a link in a minute where you can go and see where you can donate. But I do want to say that we offer about once or twice a month some very in-depth conversations on various issues and very current issues, like the new FASB guidelines or other aspects of financial management, usually very, very practical. How do you diversify your board? Very practical topics. For other outlets, they would charge you $70 to $100, $150 for any one of those webinars. We have not charged you this year. And so and we don't charge you for our daily newswire that goes over the news of the day in terms of really understanding like what the impact is going to be on nonprofits. So it is really important to us that you make an effort to support us, because your money is actually the most important to us. Number one, you're the people that we want to serve directly, and so we want to be primarily accountable to you. And number two, of course, and this, is something that everyone should think about as we go into this workshop, that, your money, donor money, is the most flexible kind of money that you can have. So it generally comes, most of it will come without strings that say you have to use it for this or that program, this or that set of costs. Very often it comes to support your general work, and that's what we need from you before the end of the year. So please feel free and feel motivated to give to us today. Even as the workshop is going on, we're going to show you in a minute the link where you can do so. So I'm going to now talk about what it is that we're going to be discussing today. And it's probably most of us on this call as we speak are involved in some way with bringing in donations over the last 2 weeks of the year. It's just a very it's kind of like our fundraising on steroids point of the year. Now, I'm not looking at Simone's face because I know she disapproves very much of this attitude. And Simone tells us that this is not, you should never approach fundraising in that way, that your fundraising program really needs to progress through the year and be based on your relationships with your donors throughout the year. And that without that, you're going to be on a constant hamster wheel of trying to gather up new donors while you're losing old donors. And that's kind of what a lot of organizations do. Even excellent organizations will get themselves caught in a situation where they're constantly having to bring on new donors at the entry-level donation instead of really renewing people over the years and retaining those relationships and building those relationships so that they're actually worth more to you and to the donor. Because Simone is joining us today because she is an absolutely straightforward advocate of good practice where fundraising is concerned. And so what she's going to talk to us today about is what do we do after we've brought in a donor one time, what is it that we need to do to kind of build that pool over time, and build those relationships. She'll talk to us about some of the most recent research. She'll tell us some stories about what works and what doesn't work in organizations, and in general, give us a sense of what it really takes to build a donor pool over time that has a much expanded kind of lifetime value. Simone, I could introduce her in the most formal kinds of ways, but instead I'm going to tell you that Simone has come up in the way many of us have, which is trial by fire. She not only has the academic background on this material, but she's also played a lot of different roles. She sits on a number of boards, including, can we see the t-shirt, Simone?
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Recently, Planned Parenthood Action of New England. So you know that their fundraising has been absolutely phenomenal over the last few years. So she knows something about the experience of being in that kind of a really hyped up environment. But she's also been an executive director with no development staff and a chief development officer where there was an executive director. So she kind of has a sense of what it really takes from a number of different positions in an organization to make a development program work. She is also known as being very provocative. So if she shocks you today with something, we'll just enjoy it and let it provoke us into new kinds of practice. But I do want to say that what we want to do today is largely respond to your questions. We know what a lot of questions are of practitioners, but you here on the line right now are important to us in a way that those other people are not, because you are here. So we're going to try to answer your questions directly. And there's a little question area on the right-hand side of your screen where you can log stuff in. Feel free to do that at any point, because you know, if there's some question that's already been answered, we will just exclude it and move along. These questions, even if they don't get answered in this particular session, will help us to devise future sessions that do answer them. So make sure that you do log in your question. Okay, so we don't have slides for our presentation today because we're planning on answering your questions. But after today's presentation, we're going to publish a set of resources in case you need to learn more about the topics we discussed today. We're also recording this webinar and we'll send it to you after the session along with those resources. You can also just log on to our website and find it as of tomorrow morning. So feel free, and just remember that there's also a lot of other material there that you can also access. Finally, we are, as always, on social media. So please post your questions, comments, and other thoughts online with our hashtag #KeepingDonors. And we use that to try to spread the knowledge and let other people know that we've had this conversation. So feel free to just tweet throughout when you hear Simone say something brilliant. So now on to Simone, and I want to start with a very simple question, Simone, not so simple, but simple for you, which is can you give us a case statement of why people need to pay attention to building their relationship with donors over time? Just what does the research say about the advisability of that?
So several different points, Ruth and everyone. First, it costs 10 times more money to acquire a new donor than it does to keep a current one. So I always imagine being, say, the development officer, going into the boss and saying, I need 10 times more money in the budget this year to acquire new donors because we've been doing such a poor job of retaining our current donors. I mean, can you imagine saying that to your boss? Hi, I need 10 times more money. That just doesn't make any sense. So it costs approximately 10 times more money to acquire a new donor. Obviously, then we want to focus on retaining donors. I want to step back a moment, and I want you to forget fundraising for a second and forget nonprofits. I want you to think about your favorite restaurant, your favorite bakery, the gas station you always avoid because they're kind of not nice. No business survives. No business survives without loyal customers. I mean, imagine Apple, not apples, but the company Apple. It's all about loyalty. So the same thing holds true for donors or theater goers if you're a nonprofit theater. We want to keep those who've already started loving us. So when you think about fundraising, it's the same thing as thinking about offering a product where you want loyal donors. Now, loyalty, whether it's for your customers at your restaurant, okay, or whether it's donors, what do you think people want? What do you think they want? Well, they want to be treated with respect. They want to be thanked promptly. Rule of thumb is a thank you letter goes out to donors within 48 hours. Why? Because they wrote the check on Monday. They sent it to you. It got to you maybe by Wednesday or Thursday. Then if you wait 48 hours and then you send it back, it could be 7 to 10 days before they get the acknowledgement that you received the check. There's nothing quite like not getting a very prompt thank you, looking at your bank statement, for example, realizing the check hasn't cleared. What do you think I think? I guess they don't need my money because they haven't even deposited a check yet. So the world is run by loyalty. And I sometimes have people play the customer-centered game, which is something I would suggest you do with your staff colleagues, with your board. So you don't think about a nonprofit. You don't think about giving money. You think about the best and worst experience you've ever had in a customer situation. And then people kind of compare notes. There's nothing like it when you hear someone say, oh my gosh, I was stuck in the airport. They didn't give us updates about the flight. It was awful, blah, blah, blah. Is that the way you want to be talked about as an organization that asks for charitable gifts? Or there's that place that you always go that goes the extra mile. Your children were crying or the dog was barking, and then they helped you do this, and then they helped you do that, none of which had anything to do with, let's say, the baked goods you were buying. But they were friendly, kind, helpful. That's what we mean when we say nurturing relationships or building relationships in order for loyalty to occur. Now, there's a couple other reasons other than it costs 10 times more money to acquire a new donor than it does to keep a current one. There's also the fact that good news follows, goes out there, and bad news goes out there. So if I'm talking about how I had a lousy experience with you all, that's not so good. On the other hand, if I'm talking about a wonderful experience, that's really good. Another piece of information about loyalty and why it's so important. The largest gift most people ever make is the gift in their will, or my shorthand, the death gift. So I have loved you so long and so well that when I'm no longer here, I still want to give to you. So I've put a gift in my will for your organization. It's a percent of my estate, or perhaps it's, $1,500 or whatever. Who are the most likely prospects to give a gift in their will, which I want to stress again is usually the largest gift anyone ever gives? loyal donors, not rich old people, not even rich people, and not just old people. It's the loyalty factor. I've been given to you for 10 years, $50 a year. I'm now thinking about creating my will, whatever. And I want to keep giving to you. So there's practically no reason, I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't pay attention to keeping our donors, because we're behaving appropriately, providing good service, etc.
So, Simone, when you say good service, can you kind of go through a number of the practices that you think are absolutely basic to that?
Sure. So one, again, is the thank you letter within 48 hours. Okay. I actually had someone say to me the other day, yeah, but if someone pays the gift online, right, then they get a bounce back email that says, we have received your gift. Thank you. And so that person was telling me, and so that's good enough. That is not good enough. Weren't we all taught by our parents or our grandparents or someone, dear, write that little thank you note for the gift you received? So the pop back from the internet is not a thank you letter. So got to have a nice thank you letter. Things like, it would be really cool if you could remember to spell my name correctly. Now, I know my name is complicated. My last name, Joyaux, I frequently get mail, Joyeaux, right? But a lot of people think of their name as quite special or personal. And especially if I've told you you've misspelled it, then for heaven's sake, fix it. All right? Don't tell people that you can't fix it, you haven't gotten around to fixing it. We all have databases now, whether it's a fundraising database like in technology or whether it's the old 3x5 cards. When I was a chief development officer, it was 3x5 cards. 3,000 donors. One day someone dropped one of the drawers, so they were all over the floor. And the young woman who was putting them back in and alphabetizing them didn't quite understand alphabetizing. So it was a mess for a while. But you keep the information. You make sure that you know that Simone Joyaux has a life partner and that the name is different. So that again, when I say recognize the gift with both names, you understand. So we've got the whole thank you thing. There's wonderful research by a man named Adrian Sargent, Sargeant. He did research on nurturing relationships with donors. Back in 2003, has a wonderful book called Building Donor Loyalty. And it talks about what we have to do with donors. So there's the thank you, the good service, whether it's spelling the name or you're not caught in voicemail hell every time you call the agency. Anybody ever experienced that? Press here for, press there for. It's like, I'm so frustrated, I'm not going to keep waiting. Good service is when I call and ask a question, I am not transferred to 3 or 4 different people. So there's enough people around that they could answer the question, all right? If you do things through the internet and, people may type a question in the comment section of your website, I sure hope someone's looking at those regularly. I had someone say to me, I put an item, a question, in the comment section under their contact. They had it there for me to ask a question, and it's been a month now and no one's responded. So it's those sorts of basic things just that are sort of common sense that we have to do. Those are the kinds of minimums. The next level, which actually really is a minimum too, is you must tell me how you spent my money. It is still the single biggest question that donors are like, I don't know how you people are spending my money. Now, you and I may think we told the person when we sent the letter saying, well, we would do this and this with it, but that's not what donors are thinking. That was the solicitation letter. Where is the donor newsletter that tells me how you've been spending my money? Where is the communication from you, i.e. the donor newsletter, that keeps saying that I'm the hero? So there's this whole thing about you darn well better be donor-centered as well as mission-centered as well as client-centered. You better be really clear. Without my gift, you won't survive. Without my gift and other people like me, you won't be able to help the puppy, the kitty, the child, the whatever. I'm the hero, not you. And it's one of the biggest mistakes nonprofits ever make. We're great. Thank you for giving us money. Without our greatness, oh, yeah, you gave us money. Without our greatness, nothing would happen. It's the Carly Simon song, actually. So if I could sing well, I would, but does everybody know you're so vain? You probably think this song is about you. Now, we all know now that it was about Warren Beatty, but it is a brilliant fundraising song. Many of us in the fundraising field like to think that Carly actually wrote it for fundraising, not for Warren. So, you're so vain as a nonprofit organization, you think the solicitation, the stories, everything are about you, as opposed to the donor. So, there's a long answer to your question.
Well, you also mentioned yesterday we were talking, and you mentioned welcome packets. Can you talk a little bit about them? And do you know what size should you be before you consider doing welcome packets?
I don't care if you've got a half-time person or no staff or nothing. So, there was research done a number of years ago by a company that no longer exists. They split up. It was called the Domain Group. And they did extraordinary research on welcome packages, or on how can we help retain donors, and on donor newsletters. You will see a lot of their research in writings by Tom Ahern, A-H-E-R-N, Jeff Brooks, people like that. So the concept of the welcome package is, this is for first-time donors, because here's where the problem is, all right? 7 out of 10 first-time donors don't give a second gift. So think about that a moment. It would be like you're the drugstore, or you're the car dealership, or you're the restaurant. 7 out of 10 of your first-time customers don't ever come back. This is just frightening. So if you asked any for-profit business what their focus was, or what their target was, if you will, for transition from first-time customer to second, they'll say, I had a bank marketing vice president say to me one time, if I don't retain 95% of our customers, I'll be fired. So that's quite a bit different than 7 out of 10 of our first-time donors don't give a second gift. So the concept of the welcome package is, it is specifically for first-time donors. They get their timely, lovely thank you letter, right? And then about 3 weeks later or so, you send them a welcome package. Now, I would love it if organizations would send me as a first-time donor like salted caramels, as a welcome package. And I don't know, maybe some roses, but that's not what we're talking about. So the welcome package is another thank you letter that just kind of says, welcome to our family. Enclosed are the following sorts of items. And then, of course, there's the name of someone I can call and his or her telephone number and email address if I have questions. So it's not just call the office, right? It's call Mary Smith if you have any questions. And we all know that's much more personal. Then what I would put in the welcome package is something like, the most recent issue of your donor newsletter. Because remember, I just gave my first gift, so I haven't seen the donor newsletter, right? Maybe you made a very interesting YouTube video, which of course I don't know about. So maybe there's just a little note or a PS in the letter that says, check out this video thank you chat for our donors or something like that. Maybe there was a very interesting article written about your organization a year ago. Then you photocopy that and you put that article in. Because it's just a little bit of information. And it comes right, just 3 weeks later than when I got my thank you letter. And it's like, oh, look at this, welcome. Oh, and the newsletter, I've never seen that. Oh my gosh, what an interesting article. So it's that sort of thing. And research has shown that that's very good. And it doesn't matter what your size is. Mm-hmm. Especially because my guess is most people on this telephone don't have 30,000 donors.
Right.
So you can sure do it.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions here, Simone, and also a lot of people who must be friends of yours who are saying hi to you. Oh,
hi.
Followers or friends. So one person is asking regarding the 710 retention for second-time gifts. Is that one? Should that be a reason why you should try to get to a recurring monthly model?
So, two different things there. One, there is the concept of monthly giving. The United States is quite far behind. Canada is like gangbusters around monthly giving. And more research now is really saying, yeah, you got to pursue monthly giving. You have to pursue monthly giving. There's Harvey McKinnon in Canada, is in Vancouver, is like the guru of monthly giving. Wonderful woman named Erica Wasdrup here in the U.S. So when, for example, you have a string of offers in a gift envelope, a gift mechanism, monthly giving ought to be first. You want to talk about monthly giving and actually use monthly giving as a theme of one of your direct mail letters. So yes, monthly giving is very good. That does not, however, mean you don't have to work to retain them, because they can still drop out. So data points of interest are 7 out of 10 first-time donors don't give a second gift. So that, to me, it's the transition from first gift to second gift. As a boss, as a board member, as an executive director, as a development officer, we should all know that rate. What is our transition rate, first gift to second gift? I know organizations that even don't call first-time donors donors. So they're not insulting. They're just simply saying that they're not a donor yet. They gave a gift, but it was only the first gift.
What do they call them?
I don't know. They just don't give them the title of donor yet because it was a one-off.
I think that's probably a pretty good distinction.
Oh, it's vitally important. People are testing us at all times. So let's just say that I saw something interesting on the television about a cause, or a dear friend of mine said, you should look at this video. This is a wonderful organization. So I impulse purchase, right? It's like at the point of sales at the grocery store. Impulse purchase. Send a gift. Well, I forgot that I sent the gift, and I didn't notice it till I saw it in my checkbook. Okay, but I got a thank you note. But then I never heard anything else until I got another solicitation. It's not about the number of solicitations I'm getting. It's about the fact that you didn't do anything with me, to me, for me, between asks.
Right.
And so I just was, it was just kind of a quick, I'll try this. So I'm not going to give any more already. Now, the next point, though, is year-on-year retention. So I'm one of the 3 out of 10 people who gave a second gift, okay? But the average year-on-year retention rates in the United States are 47%. Now, again, the banker would have been fired for that because we're not doing good enough relationship building. You can also call it cultivation, stewardship, whatever word you want. We're not doing it well enough to get me to transition to a second gift. And if I did transition to a second gift, we're not doing it well enough for me to be retained as a donor. Less than half of the year-on donors are, staying with us. I mean, this is frightening. And it's because we're so crappy at relationship building. Now, I use the term relationship building as a summary. That includes the donor newsletter, the thank you letters, the extra thank you calls, the interesting updates in the blog or whatever. It's all different kinds of things.
I want to read you this one question because I can just imagine your answer to it, and we'll see if you imagined it right. How often should I refresh the content of my thank you letter if the CEO is adding a personal note to each letter? Does using the same letter content really matter?
Well, so I've not seen any research on that, which doesn't mean there isn't any research. I've just not seen it. And we think people remember more things than they do. So there's every likelihood I won't remember that thank you letter as being the same as the prior one, unless I'm, and especially if the CEO is writing a personal note. But there is an interesting sort of question to say to yourself, which is, why can't we change it more often? Now, again, this also depends on volume, right? So if at year end we get 1,000 donors and we want to get those letters out, right, in 48 hours, the thank you letters, so maybe it's not going to be that personalized. And it may be more the same. But you got to be really smart about this. I know someone who was the founder of an organization. Someone else in the family gave a gift to the organization. The organization certainly knew that this was a family member, but the thank you letter was just a common thank you letter that didn't say anything like, wow, your family member who founded us is really cool.
Right.
And the family member who got that just off the, sheet regular was so pissed that the family member never gave again. I mean, some of this is just common sense.
Yeah.
How would you like to be treated that way?
Right. Right. I think this brings up another question, which is, a lot of people will be sitting there thinking to themselves, but we really only have 3 staff people. And when it comes down, that's the end of the year. We're like rushing to get our next year's budget ready. We're out of our minds. We have to have a holiday party for all the kids, one thing and another. And it's just hard to do those things in a timely manner. But there's this concept out there called a cultural philanthropy. And I wonder if you would explain a little bit about that and how that might alleviate some of those concerns.
So we step back and we think about organizational culture. So there's a now dead business guru, Peter Drucker, who this phrase, the sentence I'm going to say, was attributed to him. He apparently didn't actually use those words, but it was the concept. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And some people say culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So what that means is, no matter what your strategies are in your organization, if you don't have a good culture, you'll destroy the strategies. Nothing will work. So think about culture as the personality of the organization. Like, has anybody ever worked in a toxic organization, right? That would be bad culture, right? So culture is the personality of the organization. It's the way we treat each other internally. It's the way we treat each other others outside. It's our values, that sort of thing. So, and it's easy enough to look up organizational culture on the internet. So a lot of organizations are in trouble because their organizational culture is not strong, or it's very badly strong, or it's strongly bad. Culture is things like we're not silos. We actually communicate. There are far too many silos in organizations. So we actually communicate. We respect each other. We know how we want the organization to feel, and we want that perception to be held by others outside. So when we think about a culture of philanthropy, there are several key elements. One is you actually have to know what the word philanthropy means. Yes, it comes from the Greek philanthropia, love of humankind. But what it also means in a much clearer way, I think, is voluntary action for the common good. That's what philanthropy is, which means when I donate my time, I'm a philanthropist. Which means that when I give you $10 a month or $10 a year, I am a philanthropist. Philanthropist is not reserved for Bill and Melinda and their ilk. Now, we have to understand, again, voluntary action for the common good. Next thing we have to understand is your organization won't exist without charitable gifts. You're a charity. A hospital, unless it's a for-profit hospital, the hospital, the university, they're all charities. What's interesting is I know, and it's not uncommon that employees say in a big hospital don't even realize the organization of the hospital is a charity. So they sure don't have a culture of philanthropy. So recognizing you're a charity, recognizing that if you don't have donors, forget donations for a minute. If you don't have donors, you won't exist. Donors are more important than donations. Because again, it's better to have 10 donors who are giving to you regularly than one donor who's giving you $10,000. It's the donors that count, especially when you realize that that largest gift they'll ever make could be in their will. Yeah. So, culture of philanthropy means we know we're a charity. Culture of philanthropy means we operate as a donor-centered organization just like we operate as a mission-centered organization. We are customer-centered and we have diverse customers. We don't try to convince a donor to give a gift to something they're not interested in. We don't bore a donor to tears by talking about the 5 things that they've specifically said they don't care about. We talk with them about the thing they care about within our organization. It doesn't mean we don't do the other things, but don't bore me with it. I'm not interested. We know what our donors are interested in because it's in our files, because we actually talk to them sometimes. A culture of philanthropy means that when we're having a meeting with Bill and Melinda, or one of their ilk, let me rephrase. When we're having a meeting with someone who is not Bill and Melinda, but is just, one of those kind of regular donors, but then Bill and Melinda walk in, we don't come up with a quick excuse to get rid of the regular person, because it's not about the size of the gift. We're respectful of everyone. All of that is a culture of philanthropy. And you can tell an organization that believes that by the way they treat each other, by the way they treat all their donors, by the way they look at loyalty, not just gift size. I take great exception, for example, to the term major donor and major gift, because that suggests that there's a minor donor and a minor gift.
I think there's a lot about the language of fundraising that does can strike you that way. The idea that you're targeting donors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And other kinds of language like that is a little bit othering of the donor. And it's not like that is information that isn't taken in. People get the sense of how well they're valued if they have any sense at all. And so as you're communicating with them, you have to assume that they're smart enough, since they gave to you in the first place, to pick up on any disrespect that you may have for them. And I want to go on, because this culture of philanthropy thing I think is important, because one of the things I think that happens is that when you have a true culture of philanthropy, and when people understand how important it is for everybody in the organization to understand the importance of the relationships, not just with your donors, but with your constituents and your stakeholders, that that in fact everybody can do a little bit of those donor relationships, that it's one of the things we should all be capable of doing inside of especially small organizations, but even medium-sized and very large organizations.
Absolutely.
So somebody wrote in a question here that said, I am a CEO. I like to sign the notes personally. However, the time frame of 48 hours is too tight. Is it just as effective to have a founding board member, well known in the community, sign those notes to meet the 48-hour deadline? So do you want to answer that and just talk about how important it is for people to play those kinds of roles?
Okay, so there's a distinction between the formal letter that I can use with the IRS that comes out within 48, rounded up to 72 hours. It comes out on the letterhead of the institution with my name and address, with the IRS statement, no goods or services were exchanged, if that's true. The amount of money is specified, right? That's official letter. Now, the extra letter, the PS, as the CEO, and the personal signature, to me, I would write a separate card for that if I couldn't guarantee that I can do the PS and sign the letters within 48 to 72 hours. I would just do it separately. So do not confuse the formal letter which serves as a receipt. Please don't send receipts. So tacky. Just do a friggin' formal letter that has all those things in it. So it's my receipt for the IRS. And that's signed by the, and quite frankly, between all of us here, if I can fake your name, your signature, then the development office will sign them all if there isn't enough time for you to sign them. And then you write a special card later. So there's ways of, figuring this out. The other thing, though, so distinguish between, as I say, the official systems that have to happen in a timely fashion and the extra relationship building. So one of the wonderful ways board members can help is that they can make thank you calls to donors. It's not staff who make the thank you calls. It's board members, because that's by virtue of position. They're a volunteer, and they're voluntarily making the thank you call. It's not part of their job, so to speak. And board members can write personal notes. So there are some organizations who have board members make thank you calls for certain gift sizes and above, because they're talking about there's too much volume. Then there's other board members write personal notes, all right? You don't have to know these people. In fact, it's better if you don't. Hi, I'm just a board member calling to thank you for your generosity. Or I'm writing a thank you note, right? Little note card. I'm writing big because I don't know them, right? Dear Ruth, thank you so much for your contribution. And I don't even put the gift amount in. It's irrelevant. It's an extra thank you. Thank you for your contribution to Planned Parenthood. Your gift really makes a difference to all those we serve. Happy New Year, Simon Joyeux, board member. So those are all the extras. Again, don't confuse the extra things we should be doing with this is the letter that has to get out for the IRS.
And the truth of the matter is that if you're doing your work right, you have multiple relationships with donors. So they may know a board member, they may know you as the executive,
right?
They may know staff people extremely well. Understanding that all of those people have some power with potential donors and donors is really important. Because everywhere that a donor may touch you or that a donor hears about the way somebody has been touched by you
Right.
is
Right.
important information for them. There's still, the research still shows that in a lot of cases, donors give because they've heard something good in the community about you. So they've heard some woman say, oh, I can't believe what this organization did this year. They gave me a gift card so I could go pick out my own presents for the children.
Right.
And
Yeah.
someone may hear that, and they may hear a value statement in that that attracts them. And so everywhere that you touch anybody in your around your organization is potentially information that's getting to a donor, and understanding what that is and how that integrity has to fit together is extremely important.
Well, and looking at yourself and saying, though they gave and they never gave again, what the hell didn't we do? So I will tell you that I am increasingly frustrated by organizations saying, we don't have the time to do this well. You would never say that about your mission. You would close down. And it's about time that nonprofits start closing if they're not going to do not only their mission program well, but their fundraising, their governance.
Right.
There's no excuse for not doing it well, because you can get volunteers to help do it. You just have to distinguish between, I am asking this board member who's retired and who would love to do extra work with us, who's going to work on our donor newsletter. And she's going to follow best practice because she actually was a journalist, but you're going to give her all the books she has to read to do this appropriately for fundraising because it's different. And then she's going to do it as a volunteer. And that's really cool.
Right. Okay. How would you know when you're actually doing all of this well, Simone? What is it that you should be looking for as kind of a confirmation that you're doing it well? Is there a level of renewal that people want to see?
That's really interesting, because we don't have any say it should be blank. We just know that 7 out of 10 first-time donors not giving a second gift is appalling. We know that 47% year-on-year retention rate is pretty damn awful. So, different people have different opinions on that. I've never seen any research that says it should be 75%, it should be 80%. I can tell you that my professional perspective on it is that if it's not, I don't think 60% is good enough. So,
right. So, I think you've answered this already, but there's a number of questions here on the board that are asking you to define, at what point do you give a gift special treatment? What's the level at which you give a gift special treatment? So, for instance, if you've decided that you want to make sure that donors receive telephone calls from somebody in the organization at some point during the year after they've given, is there, how would you figure the cutoff point for that, or would you figure it? And how do you justify the amount of time that you would spend really attending to each individual donor?
All right. So, number one, I believe that donor thank you calls should be done by board members. So the staff time is sending me the 5 names and the phone numbers. And I want to know if they're a new donor or a continuing donor. Because you can say, welcome to the family. Or you can say, my gosh, you've been giving for so many years. Thank you so much. Right? I believe that board members can write additional thank you notes. Again, so the staff work is getting these out, assigning it to people. Secondly, loyalty is the holy grail of any business. The agitator said that back in 2009. So loyalty trumps gift size as far as I'm concerned. However, I don't ever talk about any kinds of recognition benefits attached to a gift size. So, if you give $10,000, you get to have dinner with the 3 founders and the CEO. I don't do anything like that because I'm going to invite anybody I want to anything I want for whatever reason I've decided is relevant as the Chief Development Officer or the Executive Director, because we don't have a Chief Development Officer, so the Executive Director is the Chief Development Officer. So I'm going to make darn sure that no one can ever say about me or my organization that we paid more attention to people with more money. That will not be visible. If we have a donor, multiple donors, whatever, that we want to speak with more because we know that they could give, that they may be interested in making a bequest, a gift in their will, or because they are giving us $100,000 a year, yes, we're going to spend more time with them than the $25 donor or the $1,000 donor. But those donors will never know that. They will not see that we, forget the minor people and their minor gifts. They won't know that. Every single donor gets the donor newsletter. Every single one. Now, if you happen to have written a post-it note on one of their, on the donor newsletter for 10 people, fine. But everybody gets the donor newsletter. Everybody gets the thank you letter. I believe everybody should get a phone call. Again, so, if you have 30,000 donors, then maybe that's not going to work.
Yeah. I do, every now and then we'll write a story here at NPQ about somebody who was living in a rent-controlled apartment and went to the library every day and gave a very modest amount and left, a few million to the library.
Of course.
And every time we write one of those stories, which is about twice a year, where we say, please understand, you don't know who you're dealing with. Somebody may be very frugal during their lives, but it doesn't mean that they won't have something to leave you later on. And every one of those contacts they have with you at the library desk, is going to make a difference to whether or not they feel like you should get some of their money when they leave us.
So this is a fundamental philosophical concept that's owned by an organization and the people therein, okay? I believe philanthropy should be a democratizing activity. I believe that the $25 donor, the $5 donor, I believe that the single father with 6 kids who works in the public school system kitchen could be a damn good board member, all right? I am tired of rich and white and male and straight and all of it being more important than anything else. I am not stupid or naive enough to believe that, yes, you don't have to spend more time in different situations and with different people. Of course you do. But we can darn well respect and honor everyone. And that is a culture of philanthropy. So, yes, you may be taking Mrs. So-and-so to lunch, but don't forget that the single father, 6 kids, public school system is just as kind, as important as whatever. So again, these are judgment calls every day, but I believe organizations have to come up with a philosophy as part of culture. What do we stand for? What do we believe in? That becomes, and that's a wonderful conversation to have within the organization. And find out if, in fact, I don't want to be there because they're so focused on major gifts, which means blank dollars, to the exclusion of everybody else. And I don't want to work there.
Right. I mean, a lot of this is really about understanding who your donors are. And one, really, Simone, we're getting these comments. Preach it, Simone. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, because this is right. Because it's not like I
and another comment
that much
said
different.
You're trying to wrap everybody's knuckles with rulers, and I think both are probably true.
Well, yes, I do rant and rave. Yes, I do. I do.
So one group is saying that they deal mostly with millennial donors, and one thing that they found is that when they do like a personalized text to people in response to their gifts, that has a huge effect. That people actually really enjoy it. And it brings up this idea of understanding the way that people like to be communicated with, which we don't
Yes,
always do.
right.
So
So
could
those
you
are,
talk
yeah.
just a little bit about that? Because people are, there's been a series of questions here about, can we ever do this digitally? Do we have
Right,
to do this by snail mail? Like, what are the rules around how you
right.
acknowledge things and how you communicate with donors?
Okay, so several things. Number one, what's the average age of a donor? Every generation, everywhere in the world, over and over. What's the average age of a donor? 60 plus. Because that's when we have disposable income. So, and it's the same, as I say, in every country in the world, and it always is. So if you want younger donors, you look at 50-year-olds. So if you have millennial donors, that's lovely. You want to be really paying attention to non-millennial donors too, because millennial donors could move. They're not going to stay in one place. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So next. There's also research that says that people actually have a visceral experience touching paper. All right? What do most people do sometime during the day? They go to their email and they delete. So there are many people who say, fundraisers, professional communicators, etc., that the donor newsletter needs to be in print, and it needs to follow the domain formula. Now, that doesn't mean you can't also have, a little blog or this or that. I once asked a group of millennials, what was their favorite thank you note, thank you letter, whatever? Did they have an experience with that? And over they said, the one that's handwritten, the one that comes as a card. So one of the dangers we have is we cannot say, I feel this way, hence I speak for all millennials, or I feel this way, hence I speak for all white women who wear glasses, or whatever. So I don't think you can get around or away from doing a print donor newsletter. You should take a look at Tom Ahern's book, Raising More Money with Don't Know. It's the 2013 book. It's new. It's Making Money with Donor Newsletters, or something like that. The proof is in the results from organizations. 1,000% increase in charitable gifts given through the newsletter. All right, from $5,000 to $50,000 regularly. So, yes, social media, and we should all have a social media plan, but we cannot think that social media is the only answer to everything. So I cannot conceive of not writing a print thank you letter. I can't conceive of it. Okay. Yeah, I know they don't open it. Goody. Whatever. I can't conceive of it. So be very careful. All of the major players in this sort of stuff say, yes, you have to have a social media process, but it is not exclusively social media. We keep hearing more and more now that more and more people are giving online. See, that's a misframing of the statement. Are they paying their gifts online, or were they solicited online and they're giving online? These things work together. So when I actually ask people to distinguish between that, it turns out that, oh no, it was a direct mail letter we sent. And then they paid it online. So not more and more people are giving online. They're paying it online. The direct mail print letter is still the one that they were responding to. So again, be careful.
Right. So you have a lot of people wanting to argue with you about all of this, but we are at the end of the hour. So I note the argument, and I look forward to maybe we'll have some debates and some research presented in a future webinar that will look at some of these questions about what modes of communication work best in what kinds of situations. But I do want to say it's the number of questions you've gotten, Simone, is epic. And this
so
is
send me emails.
Oh,
so just people can just email me directly and I'll answer.
So I just want to give you a chance to talk about your website so that people know where they can go.
Oh, okay. So my website is my name, SimoneJoyaux.com. There's an immense free download library with bunches of different tools in governance, fundraising, planning. A lot of people take those materials and edit them and then use them themselves, print them on their letterhead. That's why they're there. So feel free to do that. I blog weekly as Simone Uncensored, and then I have a monthly newsletter. Those are two separate subscriptions. My life partner, also husband, periodically tells me that I am too adamant about things, like when I say, you have to do it this way. So I will apologize if I was too adamant at any time. Well, vaguely. I mean, I don't apologize.
You don't ever apologize.
No, but for some things. One of the best places to read about social media reporting on those sorts of things is theagitator.net. They regularly report on that sort of thing and go back and forth about it. Two books I would suggest everyone read. One is Alone Together, which is by Sherry Turkle, like turtle, but K, Turkle. She's an MIT social scientist. And she talks about, not that we are addicted to technology, because that would mean we'd have to stop it. We're not going to stop it. But she talks about distinctions between being with people and getting to know human beings, as well as balancing it with technology. Fantastic book. The other book is Shankar Vedantam's The Hidden Brain. Shankar Vedantam is the science editor for the New York Times, and The Hidden Brain is about our unconscious mind, the lizard brain, as Seth Godin always talks about, the amygdala, and how some of that's good and some of it's really, really bad. I think both of those books may be in the list that I provided. So I'm serious, you can email me.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Simone. That was a treasure trove. And I mean, I do want to say to people on this call that if I ever have a question about donors and fundraising, Simone will attest. I always go to her and ask my questions there. So I can personally attest that she's a very wise woman where this stuff is concerned. Hey, Erin, if you'll go back a slide. I want to say to you that NPQ really, if we could exist only on readers' donations, we would do that, because it is what keeps us honest. There are a lot of publications in and around philanthropy and nonprofits that really don't want to step on any toes. We try to keep ourselves free of those kinds of sentiments, because we think it's important for us to be able to address things straight on and without consideration of whose feelings might get hurt. We want to tell the truth, and we want to address things without fear of, kind of financial retribution. So the more we get from our readers in terms of paying for things and giving us donations, the better off we're going to be. So please go to our Network for Good link, which is below today, and give us a generous gift that reflects the degree to which you use our information every year. And thank you so much for participating here. Any final words, Simone?
Yes, I'm a donor to the Nonprofit Quarterly and a subscriber, and I give through you. I don't give to you. I give through you to fulfill my own aspirations for a better world, a strategic set of publications, etc. Happy New Year, or Bonne Année, as we say in French.
And we will see you next year. Bye, Simone.